Welcome back to 6 years later. It's a leftovers chat. I am Ethan. I have seen the show a whole lot. I'm here with Benji, who has not seen the show except he's watching it the first time with me. Hey, Benji, how's it going?
Yeah, it's good. How's it for you?
It's doing pretty good, man. I've been working up for this week because we watched International Assassin last week. We did post a reaction video. We got a comment or two, a couple likes. It was really fun watching International Assassin.
Yeah, well, it was really fun to watch it.
This is the Super Bowl of TV coverage for me, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So I've written a lot of things down. I'd like to get right into it. I'm going to go a little bit on before, so I will try to leave a timestamp for when we start talking about the episode proper.
Yep, okay.
The International Assassin, Leftovers 2x8, Season 2, Episode 8, International Assassin, was written by Damon Lindelof and Nick Hughes, and it was directed by Craig Zobel and originally aired on November 22nd, 2015. So let's talk about a movie coming out in America this week called The Hunt, and I'll just read a little blurb from Wikipedia about it. The Hunt is an upcoming American thriller film based on the 1924 short story The Most Dangerous Game by Richard Connell. The writers have said that the film serves as a satire on the profound political divide between the American left and right. The film was originally scheduled for release on September 27, 2019. However, following the Dayton and El Paso mass shootings in early August 2019, Universal Pictures decided to shelve the movie and not release the movie. The decision came a day after criticism regarding the film came from the United States President Donald Trump. The Hunt has since been rescheduled for theatrical release in the United States on March 13th, 2020. That's next week. The Hunt is directed by Craig Zobel and co-written by Damon Lindelof and Nick Hughes. I thought that was interesting information pertinent to this episode of The Leftovers. Okay, so before we get started, that was interesting about The Hunt. I wanted to also give a couple notes on the direct lineage from this episode of The Leftovers to a couple episodes of the 6th season of The Sopranos. And the reason why is it's a direct comparison to this episode, and Damon Lindelof says that this show shares many of the same bones as these episodes of The Sopranos. Now, The Sopranos aired in 1999, and so by the time International Assassin aired, we were 16 years into the golden age of television. Shows like The Sopranos and The Wire had been on for a while, and later on would come Breaking Bad and Mad Men. A lot of these shows, like The Wire, never showed you anything that didn't happen in reality. You never saw a psychiatrist's office. You never showed the way of thinking. The Sopranos, on the other hand, it had Tony Soprano. The opening of the show was Tony Soprano sitting in a psychiatrist's office. So the base of the whole show is him going through his brain and through his dreams to work out the things that were happening in his real life, mafia life. So at the beginning, okay, so here's some major spoiler warnings for the beginning of the 6th season of Sopranos. So if you haven't seen the 6th season of The Sopranos, it's been 20 years, maybe you should watch it. This is for all the people of the Game of Thrones, Leftovers, Lost era that maybe think that The Sopranos is too old for them to go out and check out, and they hear it's great, but they don't want to get into the mafia thing. So I just want to talk about these two episodes real quick. At the beginning of the 6th season of The Sopranos, major spoiler, Tony Soprano was shot and falls into a coma. The first two episodes of this episode arc is Join the Club, which was written by David Chase, who created the show, and directed by David Nutter. He directed 3 of the last 6 episodes of Game of Thrones' final season. But he also directed The Reigns of Castamere, amongst other many credits. And the second episode in this arc was called Mayhem, and it was written by Matthew Weiner, who created Mad Men, but was directed by Jack Bender. Now, Jack Bender, he directed the most episodes of Lost of any one director. He directed 38 episodes of Lost. He was the Mimi leader of Lost, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. And he also directed the last episode of Lost. Mm-hmm. And also, I know you're a Game of Thrones head, he also directed The Door.
Okay.
So that's my way of saying that all these Sopranos guys kind of knew what they were doing for the future of what was going on here in The Leftovers in this timeline. In these episodes of The Sopranos, another big spoiler for The Sopranos, Tony moves through the worlds after he is shot, Tony moves through the world as Kevin Finnerty, an average white-collar citizen who loses his identity, is stranded at a hotel, gets physically accosted by monks, and is finally given a diagnosis of early-onset Alzheimer's. We get detailed minutiae of Kevin Finnerty's daily life, sales meetings, marketing teams, and all the basic things that made Tony Soprano choose another kind of life, because he was bored with the regular day-to-day. Just as Kevin Garvey is a law-abiding citizen who, as chief of police, chooses to be an international assassin, if you see that my point there. So in his real life, he's a chief. Here he chooses to be an international assassin, the opposite, right?
Mm-hmm.
And David Lindelof said there is a direct connection between these episodes of The Sopranos and International Assassin. I don't think it's very hard to see why. He also says that two films that also inspired this hour of television were the 1975's Picnic at Hanging Rock, which I have seen, which I wasn't a big fan of. But he would also say that the Parallax View from 1974 with Warren Beatty also helped shape this episode, and I would definitely suggest that movie for people to watch. Do you have anything on it? You haven't seen The Sopranos. I just spoiled it for you.
Yeah, I wasn't sure whether to turn my volume off as you were saying that, but I thought, no, I'll listen just in case it's very relevant to any of the notes I had. Yeah, no, I don't have too much on that. I think you did a good job. There was one point, which is that The Sopranos, as far as I know, is about a Italian-American mafia family, right?
Yep.
So that's the first of many kind of Italian references we're going to get, and we're going to delve into that pretty deep pretty soon. But I wanted to point that out and break a little rule we'd established, which is we weren't going to do that. But we can come back to it.
Are we talking about the Godfather stuff?
You want to just go straight into it now?
Well, let's talk about it for a minute. Yeah, I mean, we're going to start the episode proper in a second, but we can talk about the Godfather stuff because I have notes on it too.
Well, when we're just talking Italian references off the top of my head, the ones I was picking up on were obviously there was the Godfather, there's this connection here with the Sopranos, there was the soundtrack by an Italian composer, and then there was the really kind of the really big one for me was the comparison between this and Dante's Inferno by an Italian poet.
Who's that, Chaucer? Who's that, Chaucer?
The poet?
Who's the poet?
Well, the poet's Dante.
Oh, Dante. I'm an idiot. Keep getting confused with Canterbury Tales. So
well, luckily you're the editor, so you can take that.
Dante's Inferno with the guy named Virgil.
Yeah, and there's there may have been a couple more Italian bits. That's what I could remember. I did make notes though, so it may come back up.
Okay, well, and I'll talk about the Godfather stuff when we get there. I have some Godfather notes because I don't know if you've seen the Godfather, but I know it like you have your app for Bible verses.
Right.
So, so I say again to you, Benji, The Leftover, Season 2, Episode 8, International Assassin. There is no cold open in this episode. We go right to the credits. Last time we saw Kevin, he was being dragged out of a house by Michael because he drank poison and Virgin shot himself in the head. So after the credits, Kevin Garvey wakes up underwater and emerges from a bathtub naked as the day he was born. Much like a newborn baby, he slides out onto the floor of the bathroom in a strange hotel. He is immediately bombarded with a high-pitched squeal of electrical interference. He finds the closet, which is marked, "Know first who you are, and then adorn yourself accordingly." In the closet, he has his choice of 4 outfits: a priest outfit, an all-white guilty remnant outfit, a suit, and finally a Mapleton police uniform. Kevin chooses the suit. There is a knock on the door and is a hulkish bellman with flowers for, quote-unquote, Kevin Harvey. While looking for a tip, the bellman attacks Kevin. There's a James Bond-type fight, and Kevin kills his attacker. So with these comments here, since I know so much of what's happening in the series, I'm going to let you off the chain here. Go for it. What you got on those?
Yeah, so first of all, I'm just going to take a step back and say this episode, like you said, it started no cold open, straight into Kevin emerging from this bath. And the moment that happened, I knew, okay, this is going to be an intense episode. Like, this is how you know it's going to be one of those episodes when they don't even bother with cold open. And no spoilers, it was. So then, because it was such a kind of intense episode packed with so much symbolism that I could like feel, but I couldn't see, I knew it was going to be a pretty intimidating task to come back and rewatch and figure out to the best of my ability what's going on. So recording this episode now is definitely up there with some of the more intimidating stuff I've done. I don't know how we're going to tackle some of this stuff, but we'll give it our best shot. The bottom line for me was that I don't understand it all. Even on, rewatching sections and rewatching the whole thing, really, I still didn't understand it. But like I said, I could feel that there was a lot of symbolism going on, and that was enough to trigger me to go out looking for stuff and joining up the dots. And I did manage to make a few connections that made sense to me. I got to warn you, I went pretty nuts on some of these rabbit holes, so there will be some wacky stuff coming up. Although
Hold on a second. Before you go in there, I just want to say that I might cut you off on some things just because the way you feel about this episode
probably been done before.
Well, it's been done, but it's the way I feel about the episode. It's the way it should feel about the episode. And at this point, it is sometimes where some reviewers, not us, but some reviewers, throw their hands up in the air and say, all right, man, we're along for the ride. Let's just enjoy it. But that's not how we were when it first went around. We had to dissect it. So, dissect away.
Right, yeah. And I'm sure, as wacky as I think I'm going, there are people that have gone further. So, let's just get into it. So, okay. So the first like imagery of the episode is the water, right? And it's the water dripping from the tap, and it's Kevin emerging from the water. And water was definitely one of the big themes of this episode that I noticed even on first watching. So you have this instance of the water, but then throughout the episode you have so many more references to water. I can give you a few examples. What I've done is I'd spaced out these notes kind of chronologically, so I'm going to have to maybe look for a second. But there was two things really. There was the water in terms of the actual water, and then there was the color of water, if I can say that, like the blue color and the blue kind of tones that were really going on strong throughout this episode. Like there was a bunch of like blue abstract paintings, and people were wearing like blue suits and blue shirts and blue ties, blue dresses, blue carpets, like blue backs on the chairs, like blue balloons.
I mean, the whole episode has, and Breaking Bad is known for this color palettes, right? That you can pick out. This didn't have particular color palettes for pertaining to different characters, right? Unless except the only thing I can think of is maybe in the meeting with Patti in that room. Everything is very tinted in blue.
Right. And I don't want to go with the kind of obvious kind of cliche take of, oh, blue, we're in Kevin's mind. Maybe he's got this undercurrent of sadness going on and that's why it's blue. But to be honest, I couldn't really, what else can you read into that blue? If we're even meant to be doing that, or is it just another kind of example of the water theme?
And sometimes, the most basic storytelling premise is something that everybody will understand, and everybody understands kind of, the meaning of feeling blue or something like that. So, I mean, all that's very valid.
Right. Okay. Yeah. And so obviously there's the color blue going on, and there's all these water motifs. There's the water Kevin comes out of. There's the swimming pool that he rescues young Patti from. There's the water in the well. There's the water that he's warned not to drink by Virgil. There's the water that Gladys offers him. The water that Patti says she doesn't touch. And there's also, even in the very first few shots, I noticed when Kevin gets out of the bathtub and he's sort of emerging into the room, we can sort of see in the background, there's like a little desk below the window, and there's like 7 or 8. There's like a lot of bottles of water there, which is kind of weird when you think about how many water bottles do you actually need in a hotel.
Wait, where are they? Where are they?
So it's when Kevin's, I think he's come out the bathroom and he's like turned right maybe, and he's like going towards the room where there's like the bed and the window. It's below the window. There's like a low kind of coffee desk, maybe just a desk with a lamp on it, and beneath the lamp there's like a whole bunch of water bottles.
It's almost like they're placing temptation everywhere.
Yeah, exactly.
Him to drink the water.
Exactly. And again, it's so hard because there's so many different links and threads and stuff going on that I kind of want to jump into one now, but I know I'm saving most of it for later, but I'll touch on it briefly, which is the very first big kind of aha moment when I was watching this and like, oh, I think I figured something out, is when I started thinking a bit about Greek mythology and the idea of the underworld in Greek and a couple of legends surrounding that. And the one that really stuck out was the one of, I hope I pronounced this right, Persephone. So it's the goddess who...
That sounds right. Persephone sounds right.
Yeah. Who Hades, the god of the underworld, falls in love with, and he takes her against her wishes and brings her down to the underworld. And her mother, it's like Demet, I don't know. Her mother begins with D. Her mother wants her to come back, so there's this big argument, and eventually the mother gets away, and Hades is going to release her. But then Persephone ends up eating one of the pomegranate seeds, I think, in the underworld, which means she's kind of bound to it and she can't escape. And so that was what I was picking up on here with the water theme. There's a couple moments where Virgil tells Kevin, don't drink the water. And the implication is kind of, if you drink the water, you're not going to be able to escape. And that is, in the end, what Virgil himself does when he drinks the water. Even though we don't see it, it's referenced that he's drunk the water, and so he is stuck in this kind of underworld and he can't get out. So that was the first big parallel I saw, and that was from the water thing again.
But he was so thirsty.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I hope I didn't miss too much about the water. Like you said when you were going over it, when he comes out of this water, it was really reminiscent of being born, which is kind of weird. Born again, maybe rebirth. I don't know.
Yeah, born again. Let's keep that in mind for later.
Yeah.
In this episode.
Uh-huh. And then he finds that closet, right, where it's got the quote, "Know first who you are, and then adorn yourself accordingly." So I did a bit of due diligence in that quote, and that's from a Greek philosopher. I have no idea. Epictetus. It's a Greek name.
Spell it for me.
Epictetus. It's kind of like epic, and then tetus, but that doesn't sound right.
Fair enough.
Yeah. Okay. So he's a Stoic philosopher. He's kind of one of the trailblazers in that field, and his philosophy really touched heavily on self-knowledge and like the self, which is kind of what this quote is referring to. And obviously this whole episode is kind of a exploration of Kevin's self, so it makes sense for that to be there. He's also credited with the famous quote, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." So he talked a lot about how kind of the unique power of human beings is our ability to choose our response to what happens to us, and that obviously ties into his Stoic beliefs.
Sounds like the patron saint of anger management classes.
Right. And it's for me, that was kind of one of the main themes of the Leftovers as a whole, right? Lindelof it's not about solving the mystery and the what of what's happened, but more focusing on how our characters react and respond to it. So there's a couple of links there to this Greek philosopher. But then the other implication of this quote is, okay, so know first who you are and then adorn yourself accordingly. So inside this closet, there's these 4 different uniforms. And obviously, seeing that quote before, then seeing those, it's a pretty clear link that Kevin is basically, it's like choose your own adventure. Who do you want to be? Who are you? And when I was watching it, I picked up on obviously the Mapleton police outfit, the GR outfit, and the suit, which is later revealed to be the international assassin. We don't know that at the time. There's also one other outfit, and you listed here that it's a priest.
Yeah.
And when I was looking at it, it looked like purple, right?
Yeah, it had a purple. I don't know what priests call them.
Is it by any chance the same outfit that guy in the elevator later on in the episode is wearing?
Yeah, I think it is. Yeah.
Right. And there's like a Greek symbol on that, right?
Yeah, it might be Greek Orthodox or something like that.
I think it's the omega symbol. That's the last letter in the Greek alphabet. It's commonly, not commonly. It's symbolically it can often be used to reference like the end.
Sure.
So there's like Bible references where God speaks and he says like, I am the omega, the beginning and the end, along those lines. So it kind of links into this being possibly the end of Kevin's life. We don't know yet. Yeah. And it's another Greek reference actually. So that's a few Greek touches there.
I just wanted to say that, when I said patron saint of anger management, and I'll get into it further when he shows it, but one of the things we love about Kevin is his realistic outbursts to things that are ridiculous.
Yeah.
But we'll get into that later. He could use some anger management sometimes.
Right.
Go ahead.
I think that's about it.
Okay, I'll move on. Kevin catches his breath and bandages his hand. As he walks to the elevator, we hear the orchestral music, which is Chorus of the Hebrew Slaves by Verdi. And it's almost drowned out by a fire alarm blaring. Kevin enters the foyer of the hotel, taking note of the young girl by the pool. The guests and staff of the hotel are preoccupied with a bird flying around, trapped in the hotel. Kevin finds Virgil at the concierge desk and questions him about what is happening and where they are. Virgil sets a meeting with Kevin and says he hopes they don't catch that bird.
And it's worth mentioning the music at this point.
Yeah.
Because really for me, this episode would be nowhere near as great as it was without this use of the music. I really feel like it just makes the entire episode. And again, like I mentioned earlier, it's by an Italian composer. It's a very famous song in Italy, actually. I believe at one point it was kind of in the run-in to become the national anthem of Italy, or at least it was proposed by a few people to be that. So it's pretty it's kind of as Italian as you can get there.
Yep.
Yeah. So when he walks down, he sees the pool, right, and he sees young Patti by the pool. Again, obviously, I believe Patti's wearing blue. There's a swimming pool. There's more water. The big kind of moment is obviously when he sees Virgil, and that was when I was like, oh, okay. So that was when it kind of clicked. I was like, obviously, given that Kevin's here, given that Virgil's here, they're actually going to do this thing. What Virgil was alluding to and promising in earlier episodes about taking on Kevin's adversary and crossing to the other side and doing it. At no point did I actually think they really would do that, or at least that was not at the forefront of my mind. But when I see Virgil here, I'm like, okay, this is happening. This is actually going to happen. And that's when I start to get really excited. Did you notice when he sees Virgil, there's the fireman walking away from him?
I remember it, yeah.
Yeah, so, because there's a lot of references to fire in this episode. That's one of the other talking points. Obviously, the fire alarm goes off as Kevin is leaving the room, which you mentioned. But the other kind of implication of the fact that there's firemen there is we know that John in Miracle is the chief of the firefighters. So the fireman, they're next to Virgil. Is that kind of John reference? Perhaps not.
No, I totally get that. I didn't pick up on that. Yeah.
You did you hear that, sir?
Yeah, I heard John.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I didn't really have anywhere to go, especially with that. I was just pointing it out. There's a lot more of these blue abstract paintings going on around the lobby.
Okay.
One thing that actually confused me was, and I was hoping I could get your take on, when he comes to the first receptionist, the one that's not Virgil, he's still kind of calm and like playing along kind of. He's like, so who sent me these flowers, do you know? And he's sort of going with it, and then he sees Virgil and suddenly he seems to like break out of that, and he's like, hang on a sec, man, I just drank poison, what am I doing here? Does he only remember when he sees Virgil, or does he, like, I don't quite understand why it took seeing Virgil to trigger that.
Well, I think he doesn't really know what's supposed to happen. I think he doesn't know what Virgil means when he says he sees God. I think he's very confused.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't know how Virgil would get there, but he sees Virgil, and he's following the clues. He's following the symbols on this extra plane he's on, whether he's in his mind or on a plane we can get to, a plane of existence we can get to later. So I guess he goes about by solving the mystery, right? The first mystery is, why did this bellhop try to kill him in his hotel? So it goes to the concierge. And then when he sees Virgil, he sees, hey, I can get some answers there, and that's why he goes.
Okay, yeah. So he talks to Virgil, and Virgil talks about this bird. And we've already had like the firemen tie into John, and then I feel like this bird is kind of a tie into Erica as well. We've seen Erica's history with birds, and this looks kind of similar to the ones that she's dealt with in the past. But what's really interesting is how Virgil says he really hopes they don't catch the bird. So I didn't pick up on this the first time, but on the second time watching, I recalled that Virgil was actually the one who kills the bird in the end, after he's drank the water and sort of forgotten what he's really doing there. So this is kind of like a direct comparison, like the Virgil before and the Virgil after, his attitude about this bird. I don't know if the bird, I don't know what it represents.
Okay, hold on a second. Let me break in here. Okay, so after watching the episode so many times, what I get from it is, these are the birds in the box, right? Like, these are literally the birds in the box. When the birds are in the box and they come out alive, they're hanging out here before they come out. This is what I'm supposed to get from it. Did you get that from it? That these are like literally the birds that are in the same space?
Yeah, I don't know about literally. I noticed they look very similar, and I was like,
or are they supposed to represent them exactly?
Right. I didn't know if they were meant to represent the ones that were alive in the box or the ones that were dead in the box, given that, well, we saw what happened to Virgil and Kevin, and if they're here, then how did those birds get here? Maybe they're the dead ones.
Well, we know that we know that Kevin comes back from this place, but Virgil does not.
Right. So I don't know. Maybe it's both.
And maybe it's both,
living and the dead.
Yep.
I think that's it. There's obviously more to say on Virgil, but I think a better place to talk about that is when we talk about him and Kevin's meeting in the car.
Okay. Well, while the music swells, Kevin notices a little girl from earlier floating face down in the pool. He rescues her and uses CPR to get her breathing. A big father-like presence boorishly comes out to berate and collect the little girl. So we know now. This is Neil. We didn't know then. What were you? What you got on there?
Yeah. Again, this scene meant more to me in the second time watching, knowing that this is young Patti, because it's no secret that throughout this episode, Kevin, that is to say, is tasked with killing Patti. That's his job as the international assassin, and he does that on multiple occasions. It's kind of funny to me when I watch this back is that not only does he kill her 3 times, he also saves her once. I don't know what happened if he hadn't saved her. Would that cancel out him needing to kill her again? I don't know, but it is kind of weird that he ends up killing her 3 times after first saving her.
Well, and it kind of makes you wonder how much of this is about Kevin and how much of this is about Patti.
Mm-hmm.
If Kevin doesn't do it himself, does it count? I mean, that's what I think about.
Yeah.
So,
well, I've been watching Lost recently, as you know, so I was kind of expecting Desmond to dive off the top of the building at this point and swim in and drag young Patti out.
Is this the other life he sees you in, brother?
He's all over the place. Could well be.
All right, you ready to go to the garage?
Yeah, let's go for it.
Okay. In the garage, Kevin passes 2 ladies talking in Spanish on his way to meet Virgil. Virgil warns Kevin not to drink the water and that he is an international assassin. Kevin is dubious. Virgil warns Kevin against thinking in straight lines because Patti will be thinking in zigs and zags and helixes. He explains that Kevin Harvey has made a $50,000 donation to Patti Levin's campaign for the presidency. And while having a private donor meeting with her, he will find a gun in the bathroom, just like in The Godfather, and assassinate her. She is his target, and once eliminated, he can go home. Virgil makes it clear that his presence is his atonement for past sins. Kevin spots Gladys and Patti's teams, and he is warned to stay in his room until he is called.
Yeah, so I have a few on this, but I'd quite like to hear what you were going to say about The Godfather, because I didn't get much apart from the fact that, you know, it's another Italian reference.
Okay, well, have you seen The Godfather?
I hate the fact that I have to admit this for everyone to hear, but no.
Okay, well, here's the deal. I hate to bring this up again.
Mm-hmm.
You're 20 years younger than me. I am on the younger side of a person. I am just within that 5 to 10 year range of people where The Godfather is still part of your pop culture, you know, pull it up right in your brain vocabulary, okay? Well, I saw this movie. My stepmother introduced me to this movie when I was I learned everything I know about the American Mafia from my stepmother when I was 10 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And she used to regale me of stories of her dad taking her to see The Godfather when I was first out in the theaters. And that's back when you could smoke cigarettes in movie theaters.
Mm-hmm.
And so more than once, when she was in her mid-20s or whatever, she would go with her father, and they would both go through like a pack each of Camels, watching The Godfather in a movie theater. You know what I mean? And it started for me a lifelong love of all things like mafia movies and Al Pacino and all that kind of stuff. So it is a touchstone for people of my generation and earlier.
Mm-hmm.
There is so many references, so many things. Half of The Sopranos, the first whole season is Godfather references.
Mm-hmm.
Uncle Junior from The Sopranos was in The Godfather. Tons of people that were in The Sopranos were also in The Godfather. So just like Virgil mentioned The Exorcist before, you know, he mentions The Godfather now. Kevin mentions it. And by the way, I mean, it's a touchstone is if this is all in Kevin's mind, okay, and he's pulling things from his subconscious, one of the things he could be pulling in is Godfather references, especially if it's like one of his favorite movies or something. And it's very easy for me to know that a man of Virgil's age and a man of Kevin's age would come together on that. It's kind of almost a guy movie thing of that age, The Godfather.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing that that I really wanted to say about it is, if you know The Godfather, hey everybody, spoilers for The Godfather. You should see it. I'm going to talk about what happens in it for a second.
And this is the second Mafia film / TV I'm going to get spoiled today.
Well, trust me, they're worth watching anyway. It's not so much.
Yeah, I fully intend to.
Yeah, it's the way they do it. In The Godfather, one of the characters is tasked with killing 2 high-end targets. He is told where the meeting will be. They know where the meeting will be. He is supposed to go to the meeting after he is frisked by the 2 people. And he is supposed to get the gun and come out shooting. And the gun is made extra loud so no quote-unquote pain in the ass innocent bystanders will pay attention to him. They'll just get scared. He's supposed to come out of the bathroom after he gets the gun, which is hidden behind the old school toilet, shoot them and drop his gun to his side and walk out. Those are the instructions he is given. What actually happens in The Godfather is everything goes to plan. He goes to use his bathroom. He finds the gun. Instead of coming out and shooting, he puts it like in his pocket or something and goes and sits down and eats more with them. And it is one of the best scenes in movie history because of Al Pacino and because he doesn't do what he's told. And when he finally does get up and shoots the guy, he runs out, but he forgets to drop the gun. And on his way out, he holds it all the way up and then throws it out of his hand. So if Kevin is using this as a major touchstone in his brain, he may be reminding himself not to do what Michael Corleone does in The Godfather and actually come out shooting, which is what he does to Patti. So if that's not a Godfather leftovers loop to tell you about, I don't know what is. And it doesn't surprise me at all that this would be such vernacular in writers' rooms that everyone in the writers' room of The Leftovers would know exactly what is going on with everything I just said. And
it's funny because I mentioned it earlier. I was going to come back to it now. Virgil himself, I think we can pretty safely say, is the name is a reference to Dante's guide in the Divine Comedy, who takes him through hell, purgatory, and paradise. Not paradise, sorry. Not all. He takes him through hell. That I know for sure. I haven't read the Divine Comedy, but it's
hilarious.
Yeah, so I've heard. So Virgil is the guide in that who takes him through the underworld. The parallel is pretty clear, but it is interesting to me how in this moment when they're talking about the Godfather, Virgil's referencing the Godfather being, I know it's American made, but it's based on like an Italian book, right? And it's Italian inspired.
Here's I might have to poke a little hole in this just because for the sake of facts. The Godfather is don't believe it is made from an old Italian book. It's made from a book by an American author named Mario Puzo. It was optioned by the film company. This is all going off memory and specials and things I've read. So some of it could be wrong. It was optioned and paid for to become a book that they would make into a movie. And I believe that there are even some articles out there about how this guy almost made up names like for the hierarchy of the American Mafia. And almost the entire hierarchy of the American Mafia and the names for those spots are kind of made up by this guy for this movie, and it became such part of the American culture that that's what it became. It's made from an Italian American who wrote a book based on the movie rights that someone purchased.
In a kind of broad, loose sense of the word, it's Italian inspired art.
Sure. Oh, most definitely. Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Well, anyway, the Virgil's referencing Italian art, while he himself is another reference to Italian art in regard to Dante's Inferno. So it's sort of like a reference within a reference.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, and
I got you.
So yeah, let's just go into that Dante thing. I believe you told me after we met, you were like, hey, I just realized why Virgil's called Virgil. It's from this this really famous piece of literature, Dante's Inferno. In Dante's Inferno, Dante is a kind of regular-ish mortal who is guided through the underworld or hell, the Inferno, by someone called Virgil. Virgil, in the leftovers, is acting in the same way to Kevin. He mentions on a couple of occasions in the previous episode how Kevin really needs a guide. And that's a really, really strong, clear connection between Virgil of the leftovers and Virgil of Dante's Inferno. They're both acting as the guide. Especially because, right, listen to this. This is the one that kind of blew my mind a little bit. Virgil, in Dante's Inferno, Virgil is based on the Roman poet Virgil, who wrote the famous piece of literature, the Aeneid. The Aeneid, book 6, is actually about Aeneas' journey through the underworld, and within book 6, Chiron is a character in it. So you have like these layers, like there's Virgil, the guide in Dante's Inferno, referencing Virgil the poet, who wrote about a hero traveling to the underworld, being guided by Chiron. So it's kind of like an onion. It just keeps on going.
Layers and layers and layers
and layers and layers and layers. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. There's it is funny though, because I kind of wish we'd had this conversation after I'd finished Lost, but from what I know of Lost so far, and kind of a lot of the themes going on, Lost and the island in Lost, there's kind of this weird, I've heard the word purgatory thrown around a few times, and I didn't want to delve too deep into it for fear of spoilers, obviously. But it's worth mentioning because it's a Lindelof show, and it seems to be a topic he's pretty interested in, this idea of like the underworld, the purgatory, hell, paradise, heaven, these different layers, and putting everyday people like Kevin and all the guys and girls from Lost into those situations. So it's definitely not a stretch to imagine that's what's going on in the leftovers.
Well, I don't want to get too far into Lost, especially because you haven't seen it. There's connections to be made everywhere between Lost and the leftovers. It comes inherent in the DNA of the two shows.
Mm-hmm.
As far as Purgatory and Lost and Hell and Lost and Dead and Alive and Lost, I will gladly right now go into any kind of Kevin talk you want to do about that, but I'm staying away from Lost for that right now because I have a plan for you for Lost.
Okay. Well, I would trust your knowledge on that.
But, there's things to talk about there.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
This meeting in the parking garage.
Yeah.
I noticed when Kevin's walking to the car, you hear a lot of water like dripping. Like that is the really prominent sound effect. You have this like drip, drip, drip of the water. It's another kind of, I got to keep going on about this. I mean, I got to stop going on about this because we have already mentioned it, but there's again, I just kept on noticing this stuff about the water. I did notice as well, I forgot to mention, there's a lot of flowers kind of everywhere. Kevin gets delivered flowers. There's like flowers in the lobbies. There's flowers.
Why would you deliver flowers?
Well,
what do you deliver flowers for?
Well, maybe you're in love, so that's why I deliver flowers to Kevin.
Sure. Maybe you want people to get well soon.
Right, and obviously we can talk about the card later. Okay, I think we're ready to move on. Actually, I'm so sorry to do this. There was one question I had about the line Virgil delivers about Patti thinking in zigzags and helixes. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking like DNA in my mind when I'm hearing like zigzags and helixes, because that is.
I don't know if you should be thinking about the exact DNA. I think you should be thinking about the shape of what you picture helixes to be instead of a straight line.
Mm-hmm.
So I forgot the question that prompts that from Kevin. He's like, so a killer, and then I go back. He's like, it's not that simple. So
Yeah.
the helix is, I'm going to show him as myself as an abused little girl. Maybe I'll show him as this candidate for president. Maybe this candidate for president isn't me. Maybe it's someone from Facebook. Maybe it's actually the little girl, but maybe it's not the little girl. Maybe it's me behind the third iteration of me, behind the little girl that he needs to drown in a well with his bare hands, because that's the only way it's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
It's not going to be as easy as you coming to shoot me.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
You sure?
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I did have a point to make about the whole conflict between him and Patti.
Yeah.
That feels more appropriate maybe later.
Okay.
So
let's move on. Back in his room, his only choice now is to dress the same way. He reads the get well soon card and starts to see something on TV that could be Kevin Sr., but's interrupted again by the fire alarm. In the hallway, he again passes the father and his child who doesn't seem to care about the fire alarm. Outside, Kevin passes a nurse pleading with hotel security, get him through with the transplant box. He has to bellhop if the balloons are for him. And he is told that they are for Mary Jameson. He follows the package and sees it delivered to someone who from the back looks like Mary.
Yeah, and here we go again. This is no block I have one few things to say about. So the get well soon card. I'm assuming it's been pointed out many times. The image on the front of it
is a well.
Is a well, yeah.
And is this get well soon card in his hotel room, right?
Yeah. And like the well in the picture, like that is the well. Like it looks like exactly the same. Yeah, there you go. That's kind of an easy win. The fire alarm. So this is interesting. The fire alarm goes off, and you said it that the fire alarm interrupts Kevin Sr. or what may be Kevin Sr. We're not sure at this point.
Right.
For me, it was kind of the other way around. It felt like Kevin Sr. was the one that caused the fire alarm. The first time the fire alarm goes off, there's that moment where the TV kind of erupts in noise, which we can take as an indication of Kevin Sr. trying to reach Kevin. This time, it's even closer, the kind of correlation. In fact, when I was listening to it, it was almost like the minute Kevin's dad on the TV says the word fire, I believe you can make that word, you can hear that word when you listen to it. He says fire, the fire alarm goes off. And later on, when Kevin Sr. does manage to get in touch with Kevin through this weird kind of TV communication portal, he drops this kind of obscure line about how they're staying in the same room. And obviously...
Oh, you're talking about later?
Yeah. When Kevin Sr. does manage to...
That's a whole thing we should talk about when we get there.
Right. Yeah. But in terms of the fire thing that was going on, I was just kind of raising that to support this idea that maybe Kevin Sr.'s presence is causing these fire alarms to go off. Because if they are, in some sense, in the same room and there's a fire, well, that's kind of what causes the fire alarm to go off, possibly.
Agreed.
Yeah. So outside, when Kevin gets outside, he passes that nurse. So, man, this was an interesting one.
Did you look up what it said meant in Spanish?
Well, actually, I speak a little bit of Spanish. I did at A-level, and I tried to keep up my practice. So I did my best to decipher it, just using my knowledge. I didn't get it all. Maybe I got some of it wrong, but here's what I got. So she says, "Se trata de un corazón humano. Por favor, déjame entrar." I might pronounce that a little bit off. So that means, I think it's a human heart. Please let me in. Then she says something like inaudible. She says, por favor, déjame pasar. Please let me pass. Again, it's kind of inaudible, that next bit, and then she says, por favor, escúchame, tengo que ir ya. So please listen to me, I have to go now. It's kind of, I don't know how much we can get from that apart from the line about it being a heart. That's kind of, the rest of it isn't really like information, it's more just filler talk.
Yeah, and this is one of those things that's been dissected in so many other shows that I didn't write down too much about. Anything about the flowers being for Mary?
Yeah. Well, it's kind of worrying because obviously if she's at this hotel, what's the implication of that?
This is the first time I felt a big nerd film geek thing come in because I've never actually gone to film school. Maybe it was in my mind already, but this weird fading they're doing between scenes, like from Kevin outside to him following the person with the flowers. They do a fade transition. Mm-hmm. And those fade transitions are different for The Leftovers. Obviously, homages to The Godfather. The Godfather has these things left and right, slowly fade. Mm-hmm. You see a countryside here, it fades into Robert De Niro's face here.
Yeah, I did notice that, actually.
All over the place.
I didn't notice that. I didn't know why it was happening.
Yeah, but that's a film-making clear reference to The Godfather, and when I first saw it and realized what it was, I was like, yay, I am a watches too much.
And talking of just good filmmaking, there's a great shot when Kevin's following that guy delivering the flowers, when you get that kind of like line where his face, not line, you have like a line down his face and it's like reflected onto the wall. That was a really bad description of the shot.
Well, yeah, but he's been told to stay in his room, right? Mm-hmm. But he's going off doing the thing that he's an international assassin. Mm-hmm. So he's kind of playing in his choose your own adventure, mm-hmm. especially when he hears Mary Jameson. Mm-hmm. So while he is following them and he sees that the flowers are delivered to someone named Mary, who kind of looks like Mary from the back, Kevin has another fight but is beaten and handcuffed to a chair and is given a lie detector test by Gladys so he can be vetted before seeing Patti. When he lies, he gets Windexed in the face. He states his name. He says he doesn't want anyone to know who he is. Gladys says it's a lousy alias. She plugs in information about why he wants to meet Patti. After another Windexing, Kevin gives her the perfect GR reason for why he smokes. We smoke to remember the world ended. After he is uncuffed, he almost gets caught in a lie about not being thirsty. It's one of my favorite parts of the episode when that light goes off. Mm-hmm. What you got on the lie detector test?
Apart from the fact it looks really painful.
That's good for me because I do want to move on to this clip I have.
Yeah, I didn't have that much. There's a couple of lines. Gladys says, we just need to make sure you belong here. And I sort of read the double meaning in that. Not just belong here as in meeting Patti, but like belong here as in the hotel. Like, are you actually dead or not?
Because Gladys is dead.
Oh, yeah, exactly. I didn't get why they were talking if they're GR. Maybe the rules are just different in Kevin's mind or wherever we are. Like, they kind of had to be talking for this scene to work, really.
Well, yeah, but they're also being like turned into a political party. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And to be a political party, you know.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be kind of crazy if they won without speaking. I guess you can't say anything wrong if you don't say anything at all.
LOL.
Yeah. Obviously, it's kind of interesting to see, like, this lie detector, so we get to see what Kevin really thinks, and it's kind of a big moment when he says he smokes to remember that the world ended. Because this is why the GR do it, and it's kind of referencing what's been going on since like Cairo in season 1, and it's this idea that Patti and Kevin are a lot more similar than they let on. But yeah, that's about it.
Okay, I will have more on Cairo later. All right, now here comes my favorite part. I have 3 audio clips this week. Mm-hmm. We're going to get to the first one right now. While freshening up To meet Patty, Kevin has a conversation with his dad through the TV. This is about 1:15.
Where are you?
I'm in Perth. Jesus, we're staying in the same room.
What?
Son, I am fucked up on this shit they call God's tongue, so I really hope this is real. You get the flowers I sent?
Yeah, the card was blank.
It didn't say get to the well.
What well?
Take her to the well.
Who? Patty?
Wake the fuck up, asshole. Feed the fire.
What well? I'm supposed to assassinate her.
You're not a fucking assassin. Whoa, whoa. Don't fucking put it out. I'm still talking to her. You've got to take her to the well.
What well?
Son, you have to be strong. I love you.
I love you too.
I'll start. When I was watching this for the first time, and I'm sitting there on the edge of my seat, like I've said many times before, and this is happening. It is now when we discuss where this is happening, okay? Because I'm watching this, and in my mind, I'm thinking, holy shit, Kevin's dad is in Australia. He has taken God's tongue in a hotel. He is on the astral plane, and he is talking to Kevin, who is also on the astral plane. This is not in Kevin's mind. This is happening. This is happening in that spirit world between two worlds that little Patty's going to read about on the way to the well.
Mm-hmm.
And I was almost doing like a touchdown thing. I'm like,
Yeah.
like this is why I watch television.
Mm-hmm.
This is why I get up in the morning. And the innocence, the boiled down innocence of him saying to his dad, I love you too. It broke my heart. Still breaks it now when I watch it. It makes it one of my favorite scenes in the series. What were you thinking as a first-time watcher watching this?
Again, it's another instance of what I can't remember if it was I think it was just after we watched the episode. We had a brief chat, and I said, like, what I really loved about the episode is how it felt like every instance where it was like, wouldn't it be crazy if this happened? It happened. Or like where it feels like instances where you say to yourself, man, it'd be kind of cool if this happened, but they're not allowed to do that, or this just never happens. Like it's not in the rules. It's not in the rule book. And I mentioned how they seemed to just really lean into it in this episode, and they just did. Every moment where I was like, this would be really cool, or this is really cool, but it can't be happening. It's like they just did it, and they did the full mile. And this is another one of them where it's like it's just nuts. And it's
like
a lot of fun.
It's speechless is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can't describe what you're seeing, and if it's and if you think too hard about it, you might break your brain.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Where do you think where do you think this is happening? Where's Kevin right now? Putting it to you. Need an answer. It can change. I'm not going to play this audio back in the future.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I feel like not the point, but this episode, watching this episode, the whole feeling of it is like, how dare you try and guess where he is? Like, we're just going to hit you with this, then we're going to hit you with this, and then we're going to do this. And like, to the point where it's like, even if I do guess, there's just so much going on, and there's so many different, like, they're hinting this way, then they're pulling us this way, then there's like indications of this way, then there's like clues this way. It's like
Yeah.
Don't even try.
My third audio clip addresses it, and we'll play it when we get there. But it's someone on a bridge telling him it's more real than it's ever been.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? So
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of, when I heard that, it was kind of I didn't imagine I'd be making a Harry Potter reference today, but it's like that famous line in Harry Potter, where Dumbledore. I assume you've read or seen Harry Potter.
are you about to quote the thing I've already quoted 4 times on this podcast?
Perhaps.
I want Hagrid to hear you say it.
It's going to be awkward if I say the quote is like, "Go find Snape."
Just because it's in your mind,
Yeah,
does not
there you
make
go.
it real.
That's the one.
Yeah.
That's the one. So I don't know, because I feel like it's not. The question of whether it's in his mind or not is not really the important one. The question is it real or not? Because I feel like those can be 2 separate questions.
In a show where they tell you that the only supernatural event is 2,000 people or 2% of the world's population disappearing, right now from the show you're watching, are there more supernatural elements in this show?
It certainly feels like it. And if not, I don't really know how we're meant to describe what's happened this episode.
There you go. Timestamp for later. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I don't know. All I'm saying is, like, for me, the main, I wasn't so focused on, like, is it in his mind? Is it in some, like, astral plane? Is it in some higher dimension? Because, you know, I don't really feel like that's what matters. What matters is whether or not it's real. Because I believe it could be happening in his mind and yet be real, or it could be happening on some higher dimension and still be real, or it's like the 2 aren't exclusive, you know.
Just because of that line Dumbledore does say. And it's a way of thinking about mental illness passed down from Kevin Sr. maybe to Kevin Jr. And I think it's one of the most interesting questions the show poses.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to ask I did Google God's tongue to see if that was like just something that was made up in the show, or if it's a real thing. I didn't get far because I saw like the first results were all like leftovers forums, and I was like, some of them were mentioning. I saw the word season 3 in a couple of places, so I was like, okay, I'm just gonna back off from that and leave that alone. And
a lot of this is set up to be answered later too.
Yeah. Maybe quickly back to that fire thing.
Sure.
Kevin's dad.
I mean, yeah. Astral
Kevin's
plane.
dad.
Yeah.
Kevin's dad. Where even am I? Kevin's dad says, you know, feed the fire or it's going out or something. And it looks like the fire is kind of linked to how he's communicating with Kevin, because when the fire goes out, that's when the like channel closes. But also the fire alarm goes off again. Like this is like the 3rd time the fire alarm's gone off after Kevin's dad's made a even brief, but it's like it's still an appearance. So he did it. And the first time the fire alarm went off, there was that brief moment. 2nd time, fire alarm. 3rd time, fire alarm. So I feel like the case is getting pretty strong at this point. And then the fire alarm...
Wait. Finish your sentence. Mm-hmm. What case is getting pretty strong?
That the fire alarm is somehow being caused by the presence of Kevin's dad.
On the astral plane, dude. I'm telling you.
And then the fire alarm goes off after Kevin's dad disappears. So that's like number 4.
Yeah. What I'm saying.
Yeah, there you go.
What
and he even says like, don't put it out, I'm still talking, doesn't he?
Don't put it out, I'm still talking. It goes out.
So fire. I mean, maybe, I don't know, kind of on the nose, but fire's like...
The opposite of water.
Right.
Got you on the water, yeah.
Exactly. I was actually, yeah, there we go. And Dante's Inferno. Inferno is another word for fire.
Dan Brown's Inferno, fire.
Dan Brown's Inferno, yeah. Oh, man, I can't wait for the episode based on Dante's Paradise.
Oh my
That's
God.
the other part of the poem. One of the other parts.
No one talks about paradise. It's not fun. It doesn't have fire.
Yeah, but it'd be kind of nice. Nice break. A bit more relaxing.
I'm gonna go on. Okay.
Yep.
All right. Yeah, it's one of my favorite scenes in the show. So, while being walked to see Patti, Kevin passes a man with a hood over his head in a Mapleton police uniform who is handcuffed. At security, he is told to make like Jesus and is congratulated on his size. The security guard reminds him to use Neosporin on his hand, and he's cleared for security, and they say he is harmless. Now, you don't say that you have notes for here. So
yeah.
I'll just...
I mean, yeah, no, I didn't. Like, obviously stuff happens here. The guy with the hood over his head feels like that should be significant. I just didn't have that one. I didn't have the answer for that.
Here's the thing. There's a lot in this episode that's put there just to F with you, but it has meaning.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So let's say Kevin opened up his, drawer and said, "Oh, I miss being a Mapleton police officer.
Mm-hmm.
Let's try that on." Maybe that is what happened there if he did that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, actually, and that was one of my thought processes while I was watching was, I wonder what would have happened if Kevin had put on the different outfits. Like, what would those episodes have looked like?
And also, and I'm not going down that road right now.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I wondered that too. You have, Kevin has been resurrected in this episode. So when the guy tells him to make like Jesus to frisk him to put his arms out, that's a thing, I think. And we can get into some of that stuff later. And we once again have the inside joke on Justin Theroux's eyes.
And I assumed that was
with the congratulations.
Kind of like a writer's nod thing.
Yeah. Writer's nod to the rod. You know what I'm saying? Okay. Anyway, great. Good. Let's see where we are. Okay, so once inside Patty's inner sanctum, Gladys wants Kevin's assurances that the previous meeting was now, quote unquote, water under the bridge. Water, gotcha.
There we go.
And that he won't speak to Patti about North Korea, gun control, abortion, or Neil. Kevin asks to use the bathroom and walks in on Holy Wayne using the toilet. Wayne comes out. They have an exchange about seeing each other. Wayne says that he has a strong feeling when they met last time, it was also on the toilet. Wayne goes on about deja vu being a trick of the mind. The mind plays tricks on you while drinking a glass of water before Kevin can go to the bathroom. Patty's arrival is announced. We got Holy Wayne. Wayne season 2.
Yeah, man. And it did kind of remind me that I missed the guy. And
it was funny, too. It was funny seeing him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Seeing him on the toilet. Was that the thing you expected when he opened the bathroom door?
No, it was definitely not on the list of people I expected to see. And again, we know Wayne is sadly dead, so the fact he's here, it's another little tick in that box.
Drinking that water like it's water.
Right, exactly. And it's a funny conversation. He says I feel like I was sitting on the toilet the last time I met you. Deja vu, as he says.
And it's also...
You cannot trust the mind.
So if this is taking place in Kevin's mind...
Right.
Exactly. It might be don't trust any of it.
Mm. Well, that is kind of like when I'm watching it and he's saying, you cannot trust the mind. And, the mind will play tricks on you. It's another implication, obviously, that perhaps this is Kevin's mind. But there's a kind of weird moment in this where Wayne says, and we all know who tricks are for, and Kevin just goes, kids, and sort of laughs awkwardly. Was that what Wayne was looking for? No, I don't. Maybe that's why it didn't make sense.
That's maybe an American reference. There's a cereal over here called Trix, and the tagline is "Tricks are for kids."
Oh, okay.
And it would be something like a dad would come in and say, hey guys, what are you having for breakfast? And he'd be like, oh, I'm going to have some. And they'd be like, stupid daddy, tricks are for kids.
Okay.
So that's purely American reference there.
Right.
Yeah.
But would Wayne know that reference? I mean, he lived in America. Is he?
He spent some time in America, it looks like.
Time. But he didn't have kids, right?
Right. But then again, is this Wayne or is this Kevin's mind version
yeah,
of
that's true.
Wayne?
It's true. Yeah. It's just a good moment, man. I love the way Wayne says that.
It is. And the actor does so much with it.
Yeah.
And it takes a pick for him to put that thing together, and the way his lips are curling around that water, and he's like, just like showing you.
Yeah. And
look how dead I am. I'm drinking all this water.
Yeah. And the moment that Kevin's about to go back to the restroom, and then Wayne sort of grabs him, and he's like all serious, and then he's like, copy that.
Yeah, so creepy. So creepy. It's kind of like giving this actor some show off time, and it's really great. Yeah, it's really great. I'm gonna go with candidate Levin now. She walks in and owns the room. She refuses water and speaks about her assassination attempt and how assassins are never motivated by money but by beliefs. This audio clip is about 3 minutes and 7 seconds. It's slightly edited, so hopefully YouTube doesn't slam us for it.
So I'm going to ask you again. Why do you think someone would want to kill me?
You tell me.
Because they'd rather put a bullet in my head than accept my truth.
And what is your truth?
Well, shit, Kevin, you wrote me a check for $50,000. What do you think my truth is?
You want to destroy families.
Write that down. That is fucking brilliant. Our polls say our message is confusing. You just nailed it. I want to destroy families. The other day, I was in Northborough, Iowa, and I met a young man. I was working my way through the crowd, shaking hands, and I see this fellow, and he's waiting for me, and he has a baby in his arms. And I'm thinking to myself, shit, now I'm going to have to kiss that thing, because that's what one must endure if you want to get elected. So I pucker up, and you know what that young man does? He hands me the baby, and he just walks away. He gave me his child, and he disappeared. Police couldn't find him. No wife or mother stepped forward to claim it. And that baby is now in an orphanage. And it's going to be fine. It's going to be fine. It's going to grow up, and it's going to have difficulty attaching to people, and it's going to have difficulty giving and accepting love. But Kevin, that is no longer a difficulty. It is a strength. It is a survival mechanism. Because on October the 14th, attachment and love became extinct. In an instant, it became cosmically, abundantly clear that you can lose anyone at any time. Our cave collapsed, Kevin. Now we can spend all our time digging through the rubble, looking for signs of life, or we can transform. Do you mind if I ask you, Kevin, how you first heard about what we are trying to do? How you heard about the guilty remnant?
No, my wife left me.
Oh.
Joined up.
That must have been painful.
Mm-hmm. No more painful than when Neil left you.
So maybe no, not so much about the beliefs in that one.
Mm-hmm. Well, first of all, to go right back to the beginning, there's that moment where Patti turns down the water, which is interesting, to say the least. We've seen this kind of correlation between people drinking the water and them being sort of well and truly dead. so the fact that she doesn't drink the water, perhaps it's like she's not truly dead yet, and that's Kevin's job to finish that off before she is, which he eventually does with the help of water.
It also indicates that she seems to know more about what's going on in this world than other people.
Yeah, perhaps, yeah. I mean, I did do like a little double take when she walked in, because it was weird to see Patti so dressed up like this. It kind of, it's a bit of a whoa, shock moment.
Let me talk about what she says on when she talks to him right there, because the main thing she talks about is the child, and the child was given to her at a campaign stop.
Mm-hmm.
But she says the child is going to be fine. And then she rolls off all the reasons why in our world without a departure from the non-guilty remnant point of view, a child would be totally fucked up for the rest of their life.
Mm-hmm.
It's not going to be able to attach to people. It's going to have trouble accepting love.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have to accept that on October 14th, the world ended and our cave collapsed. Did you catch that when she says our cave collapsed?
Mm-hmm.
Like
the cave? In the prologue.
Yeah. And you know, the way to bring that around into this part, I just thought was excellent. I loved it. And, you know, I love how this episode slowed down for a second and gets into these really deep sections, especially with Patti, about this deep GR philosophy and how it relates. And we're not seeing a lot of GR this season, but they're everywhere.
Yeah.
And I like it.
Yeah. And the minute she said, this young man hands me a baby and just walks away, my mind went to Tommy. That's kind of what he did to Kevin, right?
It's kind of what Christine did to Tommy.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But I guess in this case, a candidate for president, someone's going to give them a baby. The baby's going to get taken care of.
Right.
Tommy knew if he gave the baby to his dad, some way or somehow, whether it's through an orphanage or somewhere, the baby wasn't going to die laying on the street.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Which,
yeah,
there's a difference between being safe and then being, mentally safe.
Uh-huh. That audio clip kind of comes in on the tail end of the conversation that I was going to bring up, which was when Patti asks Kevin why somebody would want to kill her.
Yeah.
And she said it was because, in sort of a roundabout way, she was saying, whoever this person is that wants to kill me, it's probably because they share my beliefs secretly. And again, it's this nod to Kevin and Patti being not so dissimilar after all. We've had since Cairo this sort of gradual wearing down of Kevin until he's slowly, like ever so slowly, starting to reveal that he does share many of the kind of philosophies and outlooks on life as Patti does. And this is a real kind of direct Patti calling him out on that.
And if it's himself calling himself out on it.
Right. Well, there we go. It's the Greek philosopher. It's this idea of self-knowledge. It's like, know who you are.
Adorn yourself, accordingly.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Patti and her friends end the meeting, but before the photo, Kevin finally goes into the bathroom. He gets the gun, comes out firing, unlike the Godfather. He shoots Wayne, Gladys, and after a moment where Patti tries to convince him he is a double, he shoots her as well. Patti is dead, we think.
Yeah, and I didn't expect this to happen, actually. I wasn't expecting Kevin to come out shooting. And it surprised me, caught me off guard, actually.
Yeah. I was actually expecting it to be like, because the Godfather's so baked in my brain, I was expecting some kind of weird iteration of that.
Yeah.
And did you almost buy it that she wasn't Patti?
The first time watching a little bit. Second time I was like, shut up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I forgot to mention, Patti talks about the orphan.
Yeah.
Just a minute ago we were talking about that. The well, it's called Orphan's Well. Is that right?
Yep.
I don't know. I was going to ask for a minute if Patti was an orphan, but I don't think she is.
I don't think so. We're going to get into that though, but
Yeah, just didn't want to miss that. There's it is, it's another one of those moments I was talking about, when it's like, okay, Kevin stood here, he's got a gun, Patti's in front of him, but we're only like, 35 minutes through the episode.
Yeah.
So I'm like, no, he's not going to shoot her.
Right.
But it'd be kind of cool if he did, right? And then he shoots her.
Sure.
Well, there we go. It's just, another case of that. I noticed actually, I know you have a couple of sound bites up. I don't know if you can get this one. At 35:10, 35 minutes, 10 seconds, it sounds like, and this might just be because I've been watching Lost recently, but it sounds like the same audio soundbite that Lindelof uses in Lost when it merges into like flashback mode. I don't know.
I don't for a second think that he thinks that there's not going to be any kind of comparisons and throws little things here and there to make that happen.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think so.
Mm-hmm. But that's about it for that section. Apart from, I'm sorry, I feel like I say that every time, but Virgil earlier, doesn't he warns Kevin, doesn't he? She will try to deceive you. Mm-hmm. And then there's this moment where she's like, I'm a body double. I'm not the real Patti. So it's like that kind of comes full circle.
And since we're throwing everything at the wall, she says her name is Gennaro. What's her first name? Gennaro? Gennaro is the name of the of John McClane's ex-wife in Die Hard. She changed her name from McClane to Gennaro.
Uh-huh.
Or if there's a shout out there, it's kind of a Die Hardy kind of thing to do, to shoot someone in the head like that.
Uh-huh.
Throw that there.
And when she says she's a decoy, it's kind of interesting because we know that in a way she kind of is. Not in the way she's suggesting, but in the sense that there is another Patti in the hotel, which is the young girl Patti. So she is kind of like a decoy for her.
Yeah, this is a zigzag. This is a helix.
Mm-hmm.
So Kevin goes to Virgil upset that he hasn't moved on. Once Virgil kills the trapped bird and admits he is too thirsty to resist the water, Kevin understands that Virgil can no longer help him and goes back upstairs. His wounds are now gone. So in many ways, his wounds have been cleansed. Mm-hmm. And it's a very kind of poignant scene where, this understanding fills Kevin when it comes to Virgil. Mm-hmm. I think that he pointed me in this direction. He was in a lot of pain. He wasn't atoning. And, maybe he's done his job. Mm-hmm. And it's up to Kevin to find his own way now. And Kevin's okay with that, and he understands, and he wants to let Virgil go to rest because he was so thirsty. He was thirsty to be let go of his mortal soul that was kind of chaining him with the guilt and the weight of what he had done previously to John or to whoever. And, I just really love Justin Theroux's acting here and the look of understanding he gives him. I think it's really, really, really great.
That's yeah, I can't say it better than that.
Okay, so outside the locked hotel room. All right, can I go on?
Yeah.
Outside the locked hotel room, Kevin is offered a drink by the father of the little girl. They speak about the nature of the hotel, and Kevin soon realizes this is Neil, and the little girl he has been seeing is in fact Patti. Kevin quickly kills him and reintroduces himself to little Patti. Then we get some more Verity coming in. Chorus of the Hebrew Slaves. Kevin and Patti ask Virgil the location of a well. He gives them a brochure for the well that is located in Jardin, Texas.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
this is the still shot I used to put up for the reaction video for you. This was the touchstone that I had to edit the entire reaction video to. Was you reacting to hearing
Neil.
That line?
It's kind of funny. Out of all the stuff that happens in this episode, that was the moment. But I think the reason I was so like taken back by that, because I was like, not all the signs, but it wasn't like it was just dropped on us. Like if I'd been paying more attention, I might have been able to guess that sooner. So it's kind of that feeling when you know it was right under you the whole time, but you didn't notice it, and then they pull it up, and you're like, it makes it even more impressive because it's like, oh, that was right there, and I didn't see it.
And in one line, it crystallizes so much of what you've been seeing.
Mm-hmm. It
makes everything clear. Kevin is able to take a drink because it's not water.
Mm-hmm.
The way he gives into the fact that this is Patti right away is so great. He goes, "Hi, Patti." You know what I mean? Just that reading of it.
Yeah.
Nice.
There's I actually found. Mm-hmm.
Good.
I found the conversation he had with Neil more interesting than I thought I would when I was rewatching. I was like, yeah, there's not going to be anything in here. Let's just skip past it. But then I was like, oh, you know what? Maybe there is. When he asks Kevin if he's here on business or pleasure, it took me a couple of times to check this, but I am pretty sure that Kevin is about to say pleasure, and then he switches at the last second. He says like business. Smoother than that. He says like you hear on pleasure or business? He says business. But there's the tiniest moment where you hear that beginning of like the word pleasure, and I swear I'm not imagining that. Which I don't know what the implication of that is, but it's feels like it was there on purpose.
Maybe it's him still doing this choose your own adventure role playing. I'm here. I only get to say this kind of shit once.
Mm-hmm.
I'm here because I'm on business. I'm an international assassin, and I took care of my target for the day. It's time to relax.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. And then Kevin says it turns out she was using a body double. That kind of confused me when I was watching it the first time, because I was like, I thought we'd established that it wasn't a body double, and that's why he shot them.
Well, no, I think it's very hard to say. She's not a body double, but maybe she is because he didn't leave the place right away. He's supposed to leave right away when his adversary is vanquished. So who's to say, you know?
Yeah.
And remember the whole time, you know, with the credit song, the creators are just yelling at us to let the mystery be.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah. There's when Neil quizzes Kevin about his job, and he says like, okay, so you're an international assassin, you do this, you get to travel the world, no consequences, no commitments, no responsibility. Sounds like a great job. The fact that Neil thinks this is such a great job kind of speaks quite a lot about his character. I don't think it sounds like a great job. I don't know about you.
No, but it sounds exciting for a man who maybe is going through some kind of midlife crisis, who dreams about what it would be like to go around like James Bond, right?
But that's what... Mm-hmm.
Have the skill to fight whoever you want, pick up any person you want to sleep with, you know. It sounds amazing.
It does. I mean, an assassin's an assassin.
You know.
Maybe.
Benji, I'm not talking about literally going around killing people, buddy.
Okay.
Also, we get Virgil little Patty saying to Virgil, he's going to throw me in the well. And Virgil's like, well, I hope you brought your swimsuit.
Yeah.
Driving in the car, Patty is reading about the well and the first indigenous people from Texas. And she reads, the Orphan's Well outside Jordan was built by one of these tribes. According to an ancient legend, the well formed a conduit between the world of the living and the spirit world. We start to pick up pieces of the abuse Patty has suffered since childhood, and then she reads, for centuries, people have made pilgrimages to the well to throw whatever they want to unburden themselves of. When we get to a bridge, well, we might be willing to talk about what they say in the car before I move on.
Yeah. Well, we've been speaking about whether this whole place is Kevin's mind or if it's not, and we've had on multiple occasions stuff that indicates perhaps it's in his mind. Here's one for the other side of the camp, which is he's in the spirit realm, and the well is his kind of, well, as she says here, it's a conduit between the two worlds.
Sure. And it's just more grits for the mill of where are we? What are we in Kevin's mind, or and I don't even remember if is there a well there, like when the girls are playing with Dr. Goodhart? Is there an actual well there?
I can't remember, but I feel like we should check that because I don't know.
Yeah, it's just more like what she's reading. We also get little signs in there of her saying that people say I talk too much.
Oh yeah, and I mean that is like, oh man, that is
starting to
get sad to watch. Yeah, it's rough.
Yeah,
and it's especially rough because she says it so casually. That's how she thinks about herself. And yeah, and she mentions as well, right, getting pushed downstairs. So I don't know.
Yep.
Obviously, it's not. There's some kind of parallel there between Kevin needing to push her into the well.
Well, I mean, I think we're just getting a picture of a lifetime of abuse. A lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
When we get to a bridge, there is a man with flaming cans throwing nooses over the bridge. He drags Kevin by the neck and questions him about what's going to happen with Patty at the well. And here we have my final audio clip.
What are you doing with that girl? Who are you? What are you doing with that girl? Taking her to the well. Why? I'm gonna throw her in it. Girl. Is she resisting? No. Reckon that's because she wants you to do it. Just like a woman. She believes she can improve you. I don't understand. That's bloody obvious. You have a choice. Cross or jump. Why would I jump? Because you don't want to kill a child. She's not a child. Yes, she is. And if you do this, it'll change you. None of this is real. Friend, this is more real than it's ever been.
Okay, so I played that audio clip. Kevin, and I'll talk about it in a minute, Kevin makes his decision to go, and the man whispers something only Kevin can hear. Kevin carries Patty, the young Patty, to the well, the Jordan well, in the same area where the girls disappeared and where we saw the cave woman from episode 1. You know, and I watch this clip a lot because it's one of the main audio clips that gives me problems with, because there's so much of it you can't cut to get the full meaning.
Right.
But it definitely gets flagged by YouTube a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Who is this man?
Well, that was actually my question to you.
Who do you think he is?
See, this is another example of like kind of I'm in the same situation as when we had that moment with Kevin's dad appearing on the TV. And it's like it's just kind of out there, and it's a hard one. This guy, as far as I know, I hope I'm not missing anything obvious. He's not someone we've ever met before.
Nope.
I feel like this is the type of character where when you see them, you know every single word that is going to come out of their mouth is going to be like hugely significant. But despite that, you still don't understand what they're saying. It's you have this weird.
I had trouble placing the accent.
Yeah,
Was it
definitely.
New Zealand or was it Australian? I don't know.
I want to say New Zealand, but
Maybe, maybe it was not great Australian accent.
perhaps.
This theory was floating around at the time, so I don't mind saying it now.
Mm-hmm.
We've heard about this man in Australia.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen the man in the
Oh,
tower
yeah.
mail a letter to the man in Australia. Is this the
Mhm.
Australian man? Is this David Burton?
And that's the guy that was said to die and come back.
Mm.
So it makes sense that
If he's got an Australian accent, that's the only thing I can place it with those.
perhaps, yeah, he's a guy who's knows how to traverse this spiritual realm.
Right.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a lot of, I say there's a lot, I don't know how many examples I could give you off the top of my head, but the idea of a bridge and a guardian on the bridge, that is like classic fairy tale stuff.
Sure.
In terms of storytelling. A little bit of a mess. We have these fires along the bridge. Kevin has to get out and they have to do their journey on foot. And when they get to their final destination, it is actually right next to a lake. Instantly gives us that kind of guardian of the gate stuff. Yeah.
I just got an idea,
Mhm.
and I might have to go back on something. I don't want to say too much. It's very hard. You had an idea that I told you to put away till season 3.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember what ideas I told you to put away till season 3?
There was a few ideas you told me to put away.
Okay,
so-
okay. And I don't mean to do that. I don't mean to be,
No, it's cool. I know this is,
the Gurgitch on you.
I had a feeling this was going to be one of those episodes.
I don't know why I got this idea,
Mm-hmm.
because it's not what happens in the future, but it's almost flash forwardy kind of. I mean, I'm watching a lot of Westworld promos now,
Mm-hmm.
so maybe they're getting mixed up in my head. I don't know why that didn't pop up. It looked kind of otherworldly, either post-apocalyptic or something like that to me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
In a hanging noose from a bridge kind of way.
Yeah. Well, it's when I watched the prologue, I think one of the things I said straight afterwards was it actually looked more like a flash forward than a flashback to me.
Right.
And I could easily imagine that prologue scene being set in the same moment as this. It had the same kind of vibe, I think.
Yeah. I think you're right. So real quick, let me go over the other thing that's interesting. He says, of course, it's more real than it's ever been.
Mhm.
Says if you throw a child in the well, it's going to change you. And it is a choice you're making. Kevin says she's not a child. She is a child.
Mm-hmm.
And we know that deep down inside in Patti, there's a severely abused child.
Yeah.
Hey,
I was intrigued by, obviously I was intrigued. I think that's the point when he whispers to him.
oh yeah.
Is that anything that's going to come up later, or is that just one of those moments where it's like, have your thing, speculate, but you're not going to know?
I try not to say this too much because I know you think the joke is old, but I do not know. I have not seen the show.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, let's pause recording for 1 second.
Uh-huh. Sure. Yeah, I'm just going to kind of outro this section by saying...
Okay. Okay, so before we move on, do you have anything else about the bridge?
Yeah, not so much about the bridge, but the whole journey from the moment Kevin and young Patti get out of the car until they arrive at the bridge. It's one of those moments where the music, the lighting, the acting, the cinematography, all the elements just line up so beautifully that I just kind of give in and let the episode carry me along a bit and just kind of sweep me up, and I forget about trying to read meanings or inferences or connections, and I just like take it all in. And it's perhaps my favorite moment of the episode is that walk from the bridge to the well with this Italian soundtrack just kind of in full force, and it's just so beautiful.
Yeah, they fully let go, and I think after a while, you've reached your leftovers Zen mode area. And when you tell me things like this after we've had this very long conversation that's gone from the Godfather to Dante back again, and then you reach this point where you're like, I just had to give up and watch a show, and that's what I was going for with this, and I'm so happy to hear you say that. And that's why it's so important when we're watching them. I'm wanting you to take them in and then take notes on a second watch later. Do you know what I mean? It's great to hear that. We got two sections here. One small, one's big. Let me do the small one first.
Okay.
At the well, Kevin is hesitant to push her in, but after some unrelenting questions from a clearly abused woman, he quickly pushes her in, gags at his act to rest, and then he hears adult Patti calling for help. Do you have anything about this one little spot?
No, I mean, it's just another beautiful shot, but also kind of achingly hard to watch.
It really is hard to watch because you're sitting there and she is, once again, would it help if I told you I deserve it? I talk too much. I'm a fat pig. And he just can't take it anymore because all she's doing is hurting herself.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, this is how it has to be. He kind of like gives in and pushes her in. So I'm about to read this last section here. But before I start, we have watched this episode, this crazy episode. We have seen all these things happen, from Neil to candidate Levin to Mary Jameson to Windexing in the eyes to seeing Virgil smash the bird, all the way back to when he first came up. He's been on this long journey in exactly 45 minutes. And then we get to this part. And this is the part you don't expect. And I think it's the part that makes The Leftovers, it's a signature scene that makes The Leftovers the Leftovers. Just when you think there isn't more interesting things and meaning, they give you the whole thing that the episode is trying to say in 5 minutes of the most heartbreaking acting. It's hard for me to say that I've seen better. Like, it's like this, and that's in the same season as Carrie Coon and Regina King, right? At the end of Lens. So let me go read it. After he hears Patti calling for help, Kevin immediately falls down the well to help. Patti tells Kevin that she was on Jeopardy so she could win enough money to leave Neil. She notes the previous champion stayed silent and said nothing to her in the green room at the show. There was a power to that. Silence, she says. Her story concludes with her winning enough money but not having the strength to follow through with her plans and leave. She tells Kevin she is scared. They embrace, and he pushes her down and holds her head underwater. In a difficult struggle, he finally drowns her. As her body goes limp, there is an earthquake. Kevin Garvey rises from the earth into the woods where he's been buried. Michael comes upon him, see he has risen, and exclaims, "Holy shit."
Yeah, along with about 99% of the fan base at this point, I think.
Yeah, and that's the end of the episode, and it's something we know Michael doesn't do. He doesn't curse lightly.
No, that's true, actually.
So this scene, this is episode 2-8. At the end of episode 1 times 8 Cairo, we had Patti holding Kevin bleeding. At the end of this, we have Patti holding Kevin, and he's crying hard when he realizes what he needs to do and while he's doing it. And just the Jeopardy monologue from Ann Dowd, you know, it all comes down to this person that didn't have the strength to do what she needed to do. She made all the plans. She got all the resources she needed to do it. And because she is stuck in this abusive relationship and this abusive cycle her whole life, she's not even able to let go of it almost in the afterworld. It's heartbreaking, and it's everything. And The Leftovers gives you all these heartbreaking nuggets, but I think with hope at the end. And so the only thing more amazing than the acting in that story is the fact that as soon as that's over, there's an earthquake and you know what's happening right away. And yeah, in my mind, I was like, holy shit. And we have other stuff coming that's great. This is my all-time favorite hour of television. And it's mostly because of this end scene right here.
Yeah, and I know you've said a couple of times that you are planning to spend a moment talking about the show's critical response at some point, but this is one of those things where I watch it and I think, okay, so I'm a bit of a TV nut guy, like maybe not compared to some people, but I feel like compared to the average person, I'm pretty into this stuff, and I actively try and search for the best episodes of TV and kind of in turn the best seasons. And, you know, you can do your thing where you look at IMDb and you look at the top rated episodes of all time, and there's you're going to get stuff like Ozymandias from Breaking Bad. I believe there's a episode called Hero from Attack on Titan. Maybe a couple more, I can't remember, but these are episodes that I rated as like 10.0, like these are the episodes. And so I did. I watched Breaking Bad and I really loved it. I watched Attack on Titan and again, I loved it. But when I watched those episodes, and I don't want to offend any Breaking Bad fans or Attack on Titan fans, but when I watched especially those two, they're great episodes, but they didn't have that 10.0 factor in them. It just wasn't. I kept watching them, waiting. Okay, when is it? What's going to happen that makes this such a highly rated episode? And it was like you have to kind of wait from the beginning, and then it's like, okay, what's going to happen? What's going to happen? What's going to happen? And then spoilers: Breaking Bad, Hank gets shot in Ozymandias, and you're like, okay, so that's the big moment of this episode. And similar thing happens in Attack on Titan. One of the main characters, a close friend of the main character, dies, and it feels like the popularity of these episodes are in part based on these huge kind of landmark events. With this episode of International Assassin, it was kind of the opposite, where it wasn't like I was waiting a whole hour for the episode to, you know, prove itself and waiting for some big moment to happen that made it so highly rated, because it was the whole thing was just a cohesive. From the minute Kevin emerges out of this bathtub after we've just seen him die, you know you're watching something special. And that's what kind of set it apart for me over these other episodes, where you have an event that carries it versus the entire process, as you see in this one, and just the entirety of it. I went on a little bit of a tangent there, didn't mean to go that far, but that was, yeah, and I guess that links into what I was saying before about the critical response stuff, because when I was searching out, like, what are the best episodes of TV ever, I didn't get this answer, go watch International Assassin from The Leftovers. It just wasn't on the list, you know?
Well, very specifically, I can talk a lot in more detail about this at the end of the season. I will tell you that, let me rephrase, International Assassin is my favorite hour of television ever.
Mm-hmm.
it's not my favorite episode of The Leftovers ever. Does that make sense to you?
I think so.
Okay. So, my favorite episode of The Leftovers is pretty soon. So I don't want to spoil too much on that. And I'm going to end our Leftovers conversation on your point because I liked hearing it.
Mm-hmm.
I am going to comment on Ozymandias.
Mm-hmm. And by the way, I feel like I say this about most shows, but I am quite easy to please, and Ozymandias was, don't get me wrong, a great episode.
It is by far not my favorite episode of Breaking Bad. My favorite episodes of Breaking Bad are the last two episodes of season 3.
Mm.
What is it? Full Measure, Half Measure.
Yeah.
Right. Because I remember watching that show from episode 1. And it wasn't popular. And it didn't get popular until it was on Netflix in season 3.
Mm-hmm.
And then in season 4, Walt really annoyed me, and it became a MacGyver almost-y thing. Like he's got to do a new big thing every week. And whatever. That was very fun, and I was on board for every single last second of it. I think, and I guess we're going to do a little Breaking Bad discussion now, because I have been watching some reaction videos and reviewing some things. Ozymandias is, in your mind, and this goes back into the new golden age of television, if things follow a logical conclusion to what most audience members want, you get Ozymandias. The shows I watched were like The Wire or The Sopranos, who give you a little bit of what they think the audience wants, but they don't give him the full Monty of what the audience thinks they want. And I think that's what Ozymandias did. All the worst things that could possibly happen to Walt based on the choices he made happened, and you saw the worst possible consequences all happen in one episode.
Mm.
And that's why I think people consider it great. But without any of those previous 4 seasons of episodes, you can't have that episode.
Yeah.
And it can't sit by itself, because if it sits by itself, it gives away the entire game. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. And I think that is actually, now you say that, one of the key differences here. It feels like this episode, The Leftovers, International Assassin, it's not so much, yeah, to an extent, watching all this stuff and the build-up with Patti and Kevin's conflict adds a lot of kind of depth to it. But at the same time, it's like, because it's so kind of out there and so bizarre at points, it's like no amount of watching episodes and watching build up to it could really, like, what we're seeing isn't, I don't know how to describe it. It's not directly linked to what we've seen come before. It's this complete out of the blue, weird hotel, self-contained narrative thing. And so while it does get some of its strength from what's come before, I think a great deal of the strength of the episode is the fact that you could watch it on its own and it would still be pretty good episode to watch, I think.
I mean, you'd have to tell one person, if a person never saw this, and this is not the episode I would show someone to explain The Leftovers to them.
Mm-hmm.
It's not what it's about. It's about, I can't believe the show has done what it did in the episode before, and this is the episode we get back, and we get the resolution right at the end. Do you know what I mean? And it's just about, as with every show almost in this season, it ends on such a high. Like, every time I watch this episode, I've watched it 2 or 3 times in the past week with you, and to cut it up and to get it ready for this. And every single time, I think I might be getting tired of it. We get to that end well scene with Patti, and I have to stop and I have to watch it all. It's because the acting is so damn good. It's because the writing is so damn good. And at this point, not critics, but people like me and, people I was listening to a podcast are in this state of high tension every week. Because at this point, you're witnessing a television show that has the possibility to stick the landing so hard it becomes the greatest thing you've ever seen. And you have 2 more episodes to see if it's going to do that. Because so far it's almost too good. And the ending of things is where things tend to wipe out. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, and I think Breaking Bad achieved that, but mostly through fan service and giving people kind of exactly what they wanted, which is not a bad thing because I like Breaking Bad. I love Breaking Bad. I watch Better Call Saul. I'm into all of it. Mm-hmm. Makes it seem like I'm talking down about it. I'm not. I'm just trying to, what it was like as we were watching it, and I can talk a little bit about the critical reception. If you look up, and I suggest you do when we're done the season, start reading the headlines of the big recap articles for season 2 of The Leftovers every week. Mm-hmm. It's like, what is happening here? Oh my God, it was better than last week. The Leftovers is the greatest thing on TV right now. That's how it goes. Mm-hmm. And I love talking about it with you. I think we did a good job talking about this one.
Well, I don't know if I did a good job, but I definitely gave it my all through for everything I had in there.
I did ask on Twitter for people who had questions for you, but they're not listening to me anymore. To me, I hopefully we're going to watch 1013 soon.
Yeah, I would like that.
Let me say goodbye to everybody. Thanks. Like, subscribe if you want to. Hopefully you enjoyed this one. We'll try to do another one soon, wrap up season 2, just in case anyone cares. I'm going to be doing some live recaps of Westworld when it comes out on March 15th over on Crazy Hank TV on YouTube. Right after the show, I'll get on there with Jack and Eckhart and break down what's going on Westworld Season 3. Very excited about that, and hopefully continuing the Leftovers chats. 6 years later, Leftovers chats here with Benji. I'll talk to you soon, buddy.